one of the things that is in our psyche for folks that are from Fiji is the idea of being self-sufficient and a real emphasis on education. Being a subject of the British Empire, we were taught to be obedient. We were taught to follow rules. There was a lot of pain and suffering from my descendants.
What defines you as a leader?
These are very probing questions, and
humility. Without that, you can't remain a leader very long.
in corporate industry, there's more competition and less transparency.
Welcome once again to everybody. We are in various time zones, evening time in India, morning here in the East Coast, and very early morning on the West Coast and elsewhere in the US as well. So my guest today is Shakeel Yusuf. Shakeel serves as the Chief Financial Officer of Prince William County Public Schools in Virginia. And prior to this role, he has held the positions of Comptroller at Fairfax County Public Schools, also in Virginia. And you have, I think, 40 years of experience, Shakeel, in finance and a diverse background, including auditing with big 8 firms and then a decade of working with nonprofits as well. So amazing background there. And then also honored that you are bringing all of your experience forward in various different fields, ERP implementations, transforming public finance. You are a certified CPA. I mean, the list goes on, Shaq. You're also a member of the GF OA and the Accounting, Auditing, Financial Reporting Committee. And then my association with you has largely been through your passion with sports. And you enjoy fishing, you enjoy cricket, you have coached your son's soccer team, and now you are an avid golfer. I can't only imagine how you find time for all of this, but you do. You are also married with 3 children, and you have a beautiful, beautiful wife who is also a dear friend. So I would like for you to give a brief self-intro, anything that I have missed. What was your journey like from where you started to now being the Chief Financial Officer? Any salient points along the way?
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I was born in the Fiji Islands. I'm a descendant of what is called a Girmitia, which is an indentured laborer that were brought from then British India to Fiji to work on sugarcane plantation. And towards my journey, one of the things that is in our psyche for folks that are from Fiji is the idea of being self-sufficient and a real emphasis on education. Being a subject of the British Empire, we were taught to be obedient. We were taught to follow rules. And there was a lot of pain and suffering from my descendants. And we built a country, and that country is Fiji. And we contributed to its development. So that's some of my ethos. In terms of my journey, naturally, after graduating from high school in Fiji, the university had limited options there. And my parents were fortunate enough to send me to Brisbane, Australia, where I did a bachelor's degree. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I settled in accounting, even though I never wanted to be an accountant. But that's what I ended up settling. And and when I came to America to do my MBA finance, I was attracted to the corporate world. I ended up in public service, and I think that's where I really connected. Because it has a greater connection with our societies, and somewhere along the line, it works towards what my values are, which is service. I could have gone on the private sector, and sometimes I joke about it, but the private sector, and later on we can elaborate, is a different model. But that's essentially my journey to where I am today.
Definitely has shaped your leadership tendencies or mantra. I have seen some of that. So talk to us about what defines you as a leader. What is your leadership mantra?
Part of and this is and by the way, Rijuta, thank you, but these are very probing questions. And um, so some of you might be familiar with the book The Speed of Trust by Stephen M. Covey.
Yeah.
And it's something that is a good reading. You can also download it as an Audible. I'm definitely not going to talk about it, but some of the things I picked up from there and some of my own characteristics that I have always ascribed to is first of all, your character and integrity. In finance, you have to have integrity, you have to have character about what you do. The other part of success is how well you collaborate with your peers and your stakeholders. And
Mhm.
this is where you can have tough conversations, but also you have to understand their perspectives. You also have to have a drive for innovation, making things better, improving things through efficiencies. And finally, something that my parents taught me very long ago was humility and not forgetting where your roots are. And so we tend to, leadership can get into people's heads. And so
Yeah.
you have to remind yourself about humility.
Very true. I think every leader today and everybody that we look up to, all of the greats definitely have learned this, whether they have grown up with it, whether they have been taught it, or whether they have learned it the hard way. Humility. Without that, you can't remain a leader very long, and that is something I feel like you have brought that forward to your cricket teams, but I'm guessing you bring that forward to your work teams as well. And in the context of being a visionary, how do you imbibe that approach? Does public education afford you the ability to be that visionary? Um, you're
There are
talking about
many
financial
ways.
policies and you're talking about public education. So share a
So
little bit about some of that.
yeah, in public education, there is what we consider the main our focus, which I've been in local government, which
Yeah,
is public safety and public work services such as parks and recreation that a typical city or a county provides. And part of it, a big part of it in the United States of America is education, which is its own entity and its own industry, if you want to look at it. So in terms of being visionary, a lot of what we do is like, in public safety, there's police officers out there. In education, there are teachers. So we are more what I consider in the background, but making sure we have efficiencies in what we
yeah,
do, level of services that we provide is very, very important because so for example, if a teacher doesn't get paid on time, I'm just giving
yeah,
you a very basic example,
yeah,
that teacher has stress. That stress could eventually go into the classroom, right?
yeah,
So if there was a problem with the paycheck or something like that,
yeah.
we do want to make sure that when we provide these services, we are on time, efficient, and our customers are satisfied.
So who are your customers, Shank? In your role as the CFO, do you often get a chance to talk to your customers? Who would you define as your customers?
So typically, most of my interactions, my customers are the departments that I
Yeah,
service, the schools, the teachers, but they are stakeholders. We have parents.
yeah,
We have parents. We have also elected officials, and ultimately, one of the things that I have always looked at is many years ago there was a former superintendent who always reminded everybody the main thing is the main thing. The main thing for a school district is the students.
yeah,
Okay. And it's
yeah,
to provide that learning and education to them.
yeah,
So, yes, I have many customers. I engage in a lot of stakeholder inputs, and, parents expect and demand the best for their kids.
yeah,
And you have to be able to be transparent and clear as to how you're providing services to them. And so my interaction has a lot to do with budgets, financial information, and those types of things, which do affect the quality and education of our students. So just stepping back, you talked to me about visionary, and if I can indulge a little bit,
Yeah, absolutely.
you said something about cricket,
Yes.
and that would require a 2 hour session on itself. But I do want to recognize Rijuta here. She has more to offer because she's an innovator and leader in America in the sport of cricket. Because really, cricket is a niche sport here, and it still is a niche sport. Yes, we hosted the World Cup, we did all of that, but most of the cricket played here is very recreational. When I first came to the United States, for from the period of 1985 to about 97, 98, before the internet, there was really very little information that you could keep up with unless you found a newspaper from abroad that would tell
Yeah.
you about from a cricket playing nation. So that was lack of information. So, that was a period that I was totally not into cricket because it wasn't there. And then
Yeah.
you had our cable services that provided some. You had to do a pay-per-view to watch some World Cup cricket, but there was nothing like Willow cricket or anything or the internet. And so there was always this desire on my part to see if there's cricket being played in this area. And it was very interesting. And one of the most funny stories when we started cricket, we went to George Mason University, local university, and got the students from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and we tried to form a team and we called it the Fairfax Cricket Club because we were in Fairfax County. But the most interesting thing was we were meeting at my place and the guys were hungry, so I ordered pizza. And the person delivering pizza was from the subcontinent. And forget about tipping him. The first question that everybody asked him is, "Do you play cricket?" Because we were trying to find cricketers, and then in the late 90s when with the dot-com boom, there were a lot of H-1 visas given to the subcontinent, and we had a huge influx of really good cricketers that came, not only
Yeah.
technology folks, but really good sports, and the sports flourished here. But I thought I'd just throw that in, and it was really just to have a recreation outlet. And very soon I realized that I could just look at it vicariously, and some of the talent we had here was really good.
So, two things, Shaq, that I'll also elaborate on. We are talking about financial visionary, being a financial visionary. You've definitely applied the principles of finance to be able to nurture the sport of cricket with the limited budgets that we have, it being the amateur. It started as the amateur leagues and it still continues. Majority of cricket here is still played at the amateur level. And you and I have maybe conflicting opinions or differing opinions on bringing in paid players from overseas and all of those things. But let's leave that aside. You had to make your passion a mainstream sport as much as possible for you. And I truly, truly appreciate what you have done for everybody who is here. They've wanted to play, and you've led the WCL, the Washington Cricket League, with grace for so many years. I know you've tried to relinquish controls to the next generation, but that hasn't really happened. So maybe we'll see that in the future. Asking the pizza delivery guy if he could play cricket, you had to make a cricket team, a visionary approach there too. So you had to make 11 players. That said, going back to our topic, between public you sort of elaborate, mentioned this, you alluded to this. Public education differs from corporate, and you could have gone into the private sector. What stopped you? What was the motivator to stay in public service?
Well, I think what we need to really understand is the difference between, public service and corporate.
Yeah.
Corporations are about the bottom line, improving the shareholder uh, financial. It's really for financial gain. So you have products, and products are sold, and those that invest in those products, the shareholders, get a return. In corporate industry, there's more competition, and less transparency because you have to protect your fiscal and your trade secrets and etc. So in that environment, and I go back about 20 years when you had Enron.
Yeah.
Enron had a great vision.
Yeah.
And that was to maximize the shareholder return on investments, maximize the equity, but they had no values.
Yeah.
Okay, they had no integrity. There was no character there, and it was overcome by greed, and so that type of atmosphere did not resonate with my values. And when you look at public service is about making sure there's more you have to be transparent because this
Right.
is funded by the public and you have to be able to put yourself out there and understand that the public may not be happy with things you do. Cross-reference that with the corporate industry, if you don't survive because nobody will buy your product, right? But here, uh, our public education system is here to stay. Our public services are here to stay. So you have to build a value system around that of transparency, service delivery, and making sure that you have what I call stewardship. So transparency and stewardship, which means you looking at other people's skills, but other people's money. The big thing about education today, and I just want to deviate a little bit, is really there's a focus on, and this is more to the audience, 21st century skills.
Yeah.
We are going to have jobs in the future that we don't know what they are right now. If you were to ask me 5, 6 years ago, well, I don't know how long TikTok's been in vogue, what an influencer was, and it was a real job, I wouldn't have known it. Okay.
Yeah.
But you have influencers out there. So some of the things that is required for our children and future generations to survive is they have to be critical thinkers, they have to be creative, they have to be able to communicate, and they have to learn to collaborate. It's no longer you sitting in the lab by yourself and doing something. It's how you interact with others. And those are something that is very different because, our traditional education systems, teach you how to get past tests and stuff. But really that's teaching what they call teaching to test, whereas, and I'm not an educator, so I just want to caveat that, but education is important in terms of what skill sets you bring into society. And that's the strength of any society, is how well your future generations are prepared to take leadership roles. So I think transparency and stewardship are very important things in the public service area.
You brought up a great point. You have to teach the next generation of leaders to be critical thinkers. You have to learn to collaborate. All of this is coming from the ground level. It is coming from the classrooms. But you reach the corporate world, and somewhere along the way, it is getting lost. Now, why do we see a lot of that happening? This is just a follow-up question to your comment. Any thoughts there? Where are we losing this?
I think some of the as I said, each corporation has a different culture.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at successful corporations and corporations that have held their market positions over a period of time, you will see that these characteristics are there, right? If you do a deeper dive. Where there's a lack of trust, there's no teamwork, lack of collaboration, those are corporations that finally do not succeed.
All of these values that you are talking about, this is exactly the kind of values that I have been pushing, that we talk about in the field of customer success. So there is that intertwining without imbibing integrity and transparency and authenticity and stewardship, you don't actually even reach any end customers, whether that is in the public sector or public service or in the corporate private world. Technology. You have education budgets. You definitely have to make a call where you're investing that money. You're setting up the financial policies. How have you been able to embrace technology? I mean, even in cricket, we started out with writing scorecards on paper, and now you have all these apps, and we've switched from app to app. So, you have to
there
stay
was a time when
relevant.
we had to
And
call somebody at the field. Hey, what's the score? I'm on my way. Should I come? No, don't
yeah,
come. We've collapsed. And,
yeah,
and now you can sit at and follow a game,
yes,
and follow the scoring. So in public education, let me give you an example. A few years back, just before the pandemic, they were talking about one-to-one student devices. And a lot of and at that time I was at a different area. We were talking about a 3-year plan. Okay, get our high schoolers first, then our middle schoolers, then elementary schoolers, and we were going to do it over three years. Well, guess
yeah,
what? We had the pandemic, and
yeah,
we had the remote learning, etc. And so that just forced everybody to have one devices, and it's something now that is a given that
yeah,
they are one-to-one devices. Um, and the technologies behind that is to make sure that the students are able to focus on educational content and not other stuff. And so there's a level of security that comes out. But from my perspective, it was building. I built ERP systems. Well, no, I have implemented ERP systems, led the implementation. But it's also about modernizing the employee and student experience. So when I talk about the employee experience here, I talked a little bit about payroll, right? Can somebody look up their pay stub and they leave from an app?
mhm,
That's an important given now.
mhm,
Everybody has a cell phone. I have mine here. And they are able to conduct business through that. So getting into that level of technology, uh, uh, governments and public sectors are less, are behind in it compared to the corporate world, but we're getting
mhm,
there.
mhm.
Students being, parents being able to interact. For example, bus apps. Your student
Yeah,
is going on a school bus, you
yeah,
can look up an app and see where the bus is, etc. You can communicate. So, in terms of communicating. So these things are very, very important in terms of modernizing the employee and student experience. We're still not, you know, completely digitized, but we are there. So, I may be issuing contracts
yeah,
for various services, and this is a procurement activity. And so what we are moving towards now is, okay, we can have our vendor in the traditional way. You'd put a deadline, and everybody ran with their binders or their thumb drives and brought it to your office by 4 o'clock, because public procurement is very strict. If you missed it by 2 minutes or 30 seconds, they'll disqualify you. Now it's all done online where they can put their
yeah,
proposals and it's digitized. And then the
yeah,
whole contracting process goes through there, the scoring, when you do RFPs, et cetera. So that's another example of modernization
yeah.
that we do. There's the whole financial reporting piece that is coming in, but I think that is some of the things that I can speak to in terms of modernizing the student experience.
And the end customer doesn't always see how the sausage making happens, don't they? They
Uh,
just want it to work. They
yeah, they want
they want a
efficiencies.
seamless experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we expected even in our daily lives.
Mhm.
We don't want to wait in lines. We
Yeah.
want to get served. Even today we go to an airport, you want to get in and get in the
Yeah.
plane as fast as you can. You don't want to be waiting for somebody to print you a piece of paper, etc. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of things that can be done.
Absolutely. Have there been any grounding realizations for you as you embraced technology, as your teams have embraced technology, things that have made you just hunker down and just just stay put with grit. Anything that has shown you, yes, we need the technology, but we know what we need, but we just can't get there fast enough.
So the biggest thing we struggle with is change management.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings are creatures of habit. They say that's a
Yeah,
cliche, but the change management piece is you have to have very robust and strong change management plans because you could have the greatest technology and efficiency that you want to put through and folks see it as an impediment, as a
yeah,
burden. So how well you communicate this is very, very important. How you talk about um, how how it'll benefit you with time saving. So for the
yeah,
most part, what we try and do is when I talk about if it saves time, but
yeah,
sometimes a tried and old true process might be just as good. So you have to strike the balance that you can't digitize everything all at once. You've got to take
yeah.
your stages of what you're doing.
Shaq, quickly, the role of AI. How has I mean, it's here to stay. And how do you encourage your team members to embrace it? I mean, AI right now, we're still trying to figure out what it is. So a few comments on that, please. Where does public education,
So
is that a lagging
yeah,
sort of embracer, or
no,
are you
I
at the
think
forefront?
what I would say is, and I'm talking less about public education, more about business industry. I'd
Okay.
say embrace it,
Yeah.
absolutely, but control it and not let it control you. Okay. So I use a product called Microsoft Copilot, right?
Yeah.
And it has made my work so efficient because there are times when let's say I want to look at a job description or write one.
Hmm.
I'll put some key elements in there, and it spits something. It'll give me a job description. But
Yeah.
then that doesn't mean that's the final product. Then I
Yeah.
can take that product and look at it, tweak it,
Yeah.
adjust it. That's what I mean. You control it. Don't let
Yeah.
it control you. You just don't take that product and say, this is it. And sometimes it doesn't give me the right, what I'm looking for. So I think it is very important because it's going to make our life, and our work more efficient.
Yeah.
And so, um, the other day I was doing some statistical analysis and that's something I don't like doing and it's been a
Yeah.
while, but I was like working on something and I said, okay, you know what? It's been like 30 years since I graduated from a stats class. Let me try and apply some principles. And I was doing it in Excel and I was not happy with what I did. So I put it on Copilot and it produced something that I didn't agree with.
Yeah.
But so it is as I said, control it and not let it control you.
Do you find it hard to trust the output, or do
No,
you
no,
have
no,
to
I don't. I
change
think there
the
are times
prompts?
it's how well you prompted.
Yeah.
But I think it gives you good starting points.
Yeah, that's true. I want to come back a little bit to your leadership in sports, and a quote here: sports defines character, and it also reveals character. uh, what is your take on this? I think we have plenty of stories where characters have been revealed. Care to share anything? Just give
You
us your
know what
comments.
my tag is, the dictator.
Yes. Yes.
But no, so a lot of our folks that play cricket, for the most part, I want them to have a recreation outlet, enjoy,
Yeah.
there's camaraderie. But vicariously, all of us want to be the best. We want to emulate our cricket heroes, whether it is, Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli or
Yeah.
Kapil Dev, who's my hero at my time. So I'm a little bit
Yeah.
older. And sometimes that gets in the way of really having that self-realization of where we are in the sport. So, one
Yeah.
of the things we deal with a lot is if somebody doesn't get selected or
Yeah.
doesn't get the bowling or doesn't bat in the right order, and they have disagreements with the captain, and they'll run to Rijuta or they'll come and complain to me. And with me, I keep pushing it back on the captain. And so sometimes you have to give them an outlet to talk to you and ask questions because there's folks feel like there's injustice, etc. The dictator mantra came from a gentleman who said, I'm leaving the club. And, this was after a series and the whole season of complaining, etc. And I said, well, I wish you well. And then he says, who do you think you are, dictator? And that's when it stuck. And I was at a point where I felt that, he was not getting what he wanted from the team, and the team was not getting what he wanted. And so sometimes so it's generally these kinds of characteristics we get into. But overall, it's been a very healthy experience, and people have made lifelong um, friendships because when everybody I'm gonna give an example of Rijuta's husband Balaji. He was riding his motorcycle and he saw a cricket game. And
Yeah.
he somehow figured out where the cricket field was. He saw it from the road.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and he came and talked to me. And then we talked to him a little bit and said, yeah, come to practice and start. But and so for him, he was so excited that he saw something that he could relate to home with. Right. And he says, wow. And he's had almost a 20 plus career, and he was fortunate to have Rijuta, who was very understanding, because I used to say that once our folks got married, that was the end of cricket. But it forms friendships, camaraderie. Sometimes what could have been when you lose a game. Oh, if only we got this wicket, or we dropped this catch. And so it's really a social outlet for a lot of folks that love cricket and are from cricket playing nations.
Yeah, that I couldn't agree with you more. And Balaji, the rest of the team, there are so many of our players. We met somebody yesterday and we shared a picture on the group, and the associations. And I clearly remember the person from 10 years ago and what they have done, just sitting together, reminiscing. Shaq, we had the older team from Australia that organized a tour with their families, and they just came to play cricket. And I know we were all gung-ho, and they were upset at us because we were bowling full-length pace bowling at them, and they were just there
he got a bad bounce. Yeah.
So
But
many stories to share.
Yeah, there are a lot of stories.
It does define character. And as you mentioned, people are passionate. Even the folks that have stayed, have remained, everybody has something to remember. And I think largely people are appreciative, Shaq, of the approach that you have taken, even outside of the club. Your approach, and this is why I wanted you to come here. It's not just about public service. It's not just about finance. It's not just about cricket. It's a person who has taken his upbringing and brought forward the leadership qualities to everything that you are touching. And I think for that, I wanted everybody to get an understanding that leadership happens regardless of the field that you're in, and your appreciation for your customers are applicable even in public service as well as in the private service. I do have a question here from Chandan. How can public education systems balance integration of advanced IT tools with ensuring equitable access for all students? So particularly in under-resourced communities, how do you make sure that there's equitable access? And then there's a follow-up question. Have any policies or initiatives proven successful in bringing this digital divide closer?
So the student one-to-one is a game changer for everybody. But and this is something that is very near and dear to my heart that I'm looking at. And education should be for everybody. It should not be a privilege. It should be a right of every individual, because your scientists are not from affluence. They could come from a broad spectrum.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'm looking at right now is economically disadvantaged students that do not have all the resources at home.
Yeah.
And how well we can resource those schools to support them. Okay. What is it that do they need more assistance? Do they need more tutoring?
Yeah.
And the other thing that is really important is feeding students. Students
Yeah.
coming hungry to school don't learn.
Yeah.
And so balancing that, there's federal programs that we subscribe to in terms of, feeding students, but making sure for students and some students in the United States of America, the only proper meal they have is what they get at school. So I think the one thing we've done is, the more advanced technology, et cetera, we've tried to make sure that with the one-on-one devices that everybody's on the same level playing field, but there's more we have to do in terms of changing the student experience, as we call it. But that's a great question. And it's something that, it was interesting. I was talking earlier about doing something with AI on some statistical stuff. It was really about economically disadvantaged students. And it is something that is worldwide. And education is it brings communities together.
Yeah.
And it also is what I call the great balancer, because, our top scientists are not necessarily going to come from affluent families, etc. It could be anybody. And if you deprive that person, it's going to be very difficult for them to advance. And as a nation, we don't have excellence.
Right. Education and creativity don't see the boundaries, the human-made boundaries of geographical boundaries or race, color, none of that, right? And it is the equalizer. It is also the access to basic necessities that can foster an environment that leads to creativity and ideas. I think that 100% is on us. And it is a global issue. We are coming up on time here. I would like to say thank you, but before I let you go, Shaq, a leadership takeaway that you'd like to leave us with today.
Okay, that's a big one. Be humble and help one another and try and do good in this world.
Awesome. Be humble, help one another, try and do good in this world. Thank you so much for your time today, Shaq. It has been an honor. It's always a pleasure talking to you, but I am honored that you came on this community to speak to our audience. Thank you very much to our audience.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me, Rijuta. Maybe we can do one on cricket.
Yes, we should do one entire just on cricket.
That is more, we write a book.
Yes, it's a series of books, actually. Season 1 through season 15.
15, yes.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Truly appreciate all of you. And thank you to the Thinkly team as well. They are great in facilitating these sessions. So thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.